Alright guys, so welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over my 11.5 SBR here. Just giving you guys an overview of all the parts I use and kind of why I chose those parts. We'll start off with the philosophy of this rifle. So basically I just wanted a kind of do-it-all package and something that was maneuverable and could still reach out and put rounds at distance. My whole life I've lived in a suburban or near urban area, so I really didn't have any extremely long distances to account for. Everything that I would probably see is about 400 or 500 yards and in. I wanted something that was also going to be more maneuverable in structures because this is going to be my main home defense rifle as well. I went with the 11.5 back in 2018 before it was cool, before 11.5 Master Race kicked off, because it really is the shortest I would go personally to have a suppressor. And the reason being is that 11.5 has about 40% more dwell time compared to the 10.3, like in a Mark 18. And basically dwell time is, you want a good balance of it. If it's too short, you could short stroke. If it's too long, that means the system's over gas. So I really think 11.5 strikes the best balance with that. And 12.5 has caught on really, and people like the added velocity, but it's really only like 100 feet per second. So I don't really think that you could notice a difference. You're not going to shoot far enough to notice a difference in basically terminal ballistics compared to a 12.5 and 11.5. And at the end of the day, please don't get caught up in barrel length. There's so many arguments online, and I get so many questions of, should I get a 10.5? Should I get 11.5? Should I get a 13.7? Should I get a 12.5? It doesn't matter. Just get something and start training with it and know how to use it effectively, and you'll be just fine. So we'll get into the parts breakdown here. We'll start at the front and go tip to butt for you Garand Thumb fans. So out front I have the Surefire SOCOM RC2 suppressor. The reason why I chose that suppressor is a few reasons: durability, mounting system, and reduced back pressure. So in the second generation SOCOM series with Surefire, they made some process improvements in their manufacturing process. The biggest one being their welds are now CNC instead of them being done by human. CNC welds are going to give you a much more accurate and efficient weld, and I believe they said their cans are about twice as strong as they used to be since they switched to CNC welds. For mounting system, everyone knows Surefire's muzzle devices are some of the best in the industry. They have a less than 1 MOA point of impact shift, which is great because I don't need to re-zero my gun if I want to shoot unsuppressed versus shooting suppress, even though I do shoot suppress about 99% of the time. If you don't want to shoot suppress, you still have a great muzzle device. Personally, I'm running the Surefire brake. That's just due to the fact, again, I shoot suppress about 99% of the time, and that brake acts like a sacrificial blast baffle, kind of taking the brunt of that initial expansion of gases before it gets to the suppressor baffles. And last, reduced back pressure. Surefire has done some things to the can to greatly improve the internal venting, so it's not sending as much gas back into your rifle system and ultimately back into your face and back into your lungs. So this gun's pretty easy to shoot, especially with the charging handle. We'll get to that in a second, but it's still easy to shoot suppress being such a short gun. And we'll just go back to what the muzzle is connected to. It's a Criterion 11.5 inch Core Series barrel. Now, if you didn't hear about my barrel issues, go ahead and watch this video about my experience with BCM's barrels. So Criterion was nice enough to reach out to me and send me a barrel. I did make a deal with them where I bought the bulk carrier group if they sent me a barrel, so that bulk carrier group's headspace to this barrel. Their Core Series has a taper profile to reduce weight over the length of the barrel. To me, that's not a terribly big deal in such a short rifle, but it is noticeable. And the gun is a tad lighter, especially helps out when you're going to put a bunch of crap on the front of it, like suppressor, light, and PEX and lasers and whatnot. Really happy with it so far. I haven't had any issues. It seems to be pretty accurate from my experience. I haven't done a specific accuracy test, but I've shot it at like 250, 300 yards and gotten my hits as necessary.
This is par 3, going for a 260 yarder. This is for the jacket. See if he can pull it off. Quiet. Oh my God!
Out here on the front, this is the APLC. It's the civilian power version of the PEC 15. Unfortunately, the FDA thinks that us civilians are not to be trusted with full power lasers that will shoot each other's eye out. The laser on the APLC does fine, but the illuminator is really underwhelming. It's almost useless. I would go that far to say it's pretty useless. For example, I was hunting pigs and there was a barn and a hay shed, and I shine the illuminator into the hay shed, right? It's under the moonlight. It's kind of like in the shade at night, and it did not light it up at all. On the civilian side of things, I'd recommend the BE Myers Mall. It's probably the best, most powerful laser that a civilian can buy directly. If you're comfortable with having a laser that could potentially not be fixed if it were to break, there are plenty of full power options on the market. We'll call it the black market. Full power PEC is probably the best one, tried and true. And now that we have the NGOL and Radex coming out, that's a couple more options that you can choose from. For white light, I'm running the Modlight Systems PLH V2 head. That's on the 18650 body. Again, I used to have the Surefire dual fuel, but I wasn't very impressed with the throw that it had. It would only go out to like 65 or 70 yards. So I really wanted to switch to Modlight once more and more people started posting their experience with it, and I'm very impressed. The throw on the Modlight PLH V2, it's a blend of their spill and throw. The OKW is the one that is all throw, but this one here, still the throw is about out to 200 yards, so I can see and identify things at much greater distances than the Surefire light. Tailcap, I'm a big proponent of having redundant systems. Obviously, I'm in aviation. Airplanes have redundant systems. So for tailcap, I'm running the DS00 from Surefire. So it has a plug for your pressure switch along with a tactile button on the body. So say your pressure switch was to come unraveled somehow, the wire got cut. If you didn't have that backup switch, you wouldn't be able to activate your white light. But with the DS00, your button's right there. If your pressure switch fails, you have the ability to activate white light still. For the switch, I'm running the Mod Button Light. I really am a big fan of it because I was running, again, the Surefire dual pressure pad that's about almost 3 times as long as this one. You really do save a lot of rail estate, as they like to say, by going with the Mod Button Light. People are concerned that it's polymer, but really the only thing that would destroy this if you dropped your rifle and somehow it landed perfectly on the button to crack the polymer. And even then, the actual switch is rubber, so the switch would not break, the mount would just break. Something to consider, but really not likely to happen because we have our APL and our optic at a higher level than the switch. So that's going to hit the ground first. The light sits on an Arisaka mount. It's just the side mount that they have. It does a really nice job of hugging up the light next to the PEC and keeping everything really low profile. For handguard, this is the BCM MCMR, their M-Lock rail that came out of their Keymod series once M-Lock became the true standard today. Big fan of their rails. Obviously, I had their issues with their barrel, but I really do like their rails and the mounting system that it uses, even though the silencers are pretty tight. These things are kind of a pain in the ass to get on. You gotta beat it on with a 2x4 basically. I chose M-Lock because Naval Special Warfare Crane did a study a few years back and determined that M-Lock is the superior rail system. It was much stronger and held on accessories at greater forces compared to Keymod and Picatinny. Now that doesn't mean if you have a Keymod or Picatinny rail to just think you're screwed and immediately switch. But from here on out, I don't really see any reason to buy anything but M-Lock. For the forward grip, I was shelving all my BCM parts after what happened, so I found the Samson stubby grip. I really liked it. I wanted to do the Tango down grip, but they don't have it for M-Locks. I am a fan of it. The only thing is it's completely metal, so it's a little heavy for what it is. So I do want to make a polymer version of it, so keep an eye out for that. Moving back, the optic that I'm running is the Aimpoint T2. Not much to be said about it that hasn't already been said. It's a tank. The battery life is 50,000 hours, so you can leave it on for, I think that's about 5 years. Great optic, 2 MOA dot. I used to have an EOTech. When I found out their lawsuit was happening, that they were refunding people their complete purchase price, I was the 13th person actually to send my site in to EOTech to get a refund. So I switched over to the Aimpoint at that point, haven't looked back. I kind of want to switch back just because I think the EOTech reticle is superior. The 65 MOA ring is really nice up close when you're just trying to, you know, fill the target or fill that ring with the target. And the 1 MOA dot in the center is really nice for long distance shots. It doesn't cover up the target like this 2 MOA dot does. T2 sitting on the Unity fast mount. Big fan of it. People really concerned that it's too high for them at, I think it sits 2.26 inches above the barrel. If you've never used one of these taller height mounts, it does look pretty ridiculous and looks like you would have to have a giraffe neck to make it work. But let me tell you, that's not the case. I started off with the 193, and I guess you could say that was my gateway drug to higher mounts. Thought I needed just a little bit more height and ended up buying the Unity, and I have no regrets. It's an awesome mount. It has integrated irons actually, so I emit irons from my rail. They're based in Louisiana, so it's nice to support a home state company. I'm trying to get them to give me one in clear anodized, so if you know anyone that works for Unity, put in a good word for me. For the upper receiver, it's just an Arrow M4E1. Again, in my BCM video, I note that BCM kept my entire upper last year, right when COVID was kicking off, so I had to buy all the parts when everything was kind of getting out of stock, and was able to snag one of the Arrow uppers, no complaints. In the receiver, I have the BCM bolt carrier group. That bolt is headspace to the Criterion barrel at Criterion. I think that is a neat thing that they do, so you don't have to buy the headspace gauges, they do it for you. Headspacing basically will provide you a more consistent chamber pressure, which will lend to greater accuracy. Charging handle, I'm using the Raptor SD from Radian. It's got lightning cuts in the shaft of the charging handle to vent some of that gas out before it gets to your face. Some people debate on whether it does make a difference. I think it does. I have asthma and I used to have trouble breathing after I would shoot from getting all that gas in my face. But since running the SD, I really don't notice that anymore. On the flip side, I'm running the Geissele Maritime Bolt Catch. I think it's a great option to add to your rifle, just to give you more surface area on that bolt catch when you're doing those speed reloads. For trigger, I'm running the Geissele SSA. It's a 2-stage trigger, one of the things that Geissele actually does well instead of their 1920 flash hiders. The first stage is about 3 pounds and the second stage is about 1.5 to 1 3/4. It's really nice if you want to use it for longer distance shots. You can get past that first stage and hang out on the second stage wall.
Hit. Hit. Hit.
Or you can just run it like a one stage and just pull straight through both of the stages. For selector, I'm running the Talon from Radian again. I really like the 45-degree throw. It's just economy of motion, right? I don't have to flip that selector a full 90 degrees to get the weapon on fire and get the weapon back on safe. My buffer system, I'm running the Geissele Super 42 with an H2 buffer weight. The H2 buffer weight has worked out for me in this system, it being suppressed and a short barrel. It's very smooth and recoil is almost non-existent with this. The Super 42 is a tri-braided spring, so it removes all that twang that you get in the GI spring and it provides about a 15% greater return force, which will help you out, especially if you're shooting suppress, because the extra gas in the system from shooting suppress exerts more force on that spring, so you want a spring that'll be able to counteract that and get your bolt carrier group back in battery correctly. Grip is the BCM Mod 3, I believe, just a higher angle grip. Get that natural wrist angle when you're shooting. For the stock, it again is the BCM SOP Mod stock. Big fan of it. I have my issues with BCM, but they do make great furniture. It's a much more condensed version of the B5 SOP Mod, the Crane SOP Mod basically. It's about an inch shorter and it really lends itself well on this SBR build, being more compact, lighter, while still maintaining that same SOP Mod cheek weld. For sling, I recently picked up the Slingster in M81. Don't really have a preference on slings. I'm a fan of this one. It has a very large pad and the pull tab for the slide is very easy to actuate. I wouldn't get caught up in using one sling. Personally, I'm a big fan of the Pharaoh, the T-Rex Arms one, and the Haley Strategic one. As you can see, I like to mount my sling on my outside, so I'm a right-handed shooter, so I'm mounting that on the outside of my stock placement so it's not interfering with my stock weld in my shoulder. So I mount back on the outside of the buttstock, and then I mount the forward one right in front of the mag well. I think it gives a good balance of between people liking to mount it on the end plate in front of the magwell and people liking to mount it on the buttstock and all the way in the front of the rail. Really a good balance of maneuverability and stability in case I needed to throw the rifle on my back to go hands-on with someone, climb a ladder, climb a sea can, whatever. It's still stable on my back, but it's still maneuverable if I need to switch shoulders or whatnot. As for mags that I like to use, I have a majority of P mags, but also have several Lancer mags. I'm really a big fan of these. One, they're clear, so you can see how many rounds you have at all times. And then they have metal feed lips, which that's probably the biggest downside to P mags is they are polymer and the feed lips are polymer. So there's a potential for those feed lips to potentially crack over time. I tend to stay away from GI mags just because if that metal ever gets bent, it's kind of hard to bend that metal back into its original shape. I think P mags, the polymer, and the Lancers are plenty tough enough. There's videos of them getting run over by trucks and whatnot, so I have no concerns, and I've had no issues with them either. So yeah, that's the rundown on my 11.5 build. It's my favorite gun. It's pretty much set up exactly how I like it. I do change things here and there. I think I have about a couple thousand rounds through this upper since I built it, and it's been rock solid, super accurate, and it'll just run all day pretty much. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Feel free to like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.